All right. So on with session one, we looked at the overview of the game, what the mechanics were going to be, and we talked about gravity. In session two, we talked about air control and key inputs. Today, we've looked at the level loader, or putting all of the pieces in place and being able to design a level, basically. And then next time we're going to look at the builders, the pieces that actually load up all the characters, the spikes, the monsters, all that kind of
Yes, and
stuff.
people are going to be very, very disappointed because the builders are really super simple pieces of code.
Is there anything else that we'll look at? The builders. We'll look at the builders, and then what else?
No, okay, so once we've looked at the builders, the big question we'll also look at next week is level reloading and next level loading, just to see how that works. It's very simple. And then we will talk about checkpoints, which don't exist in this release. Checkpoints come next week. And checkpoints, for those who don't know, is just basically a way to save your position within the file or within the level. So if you die partway through, you don't start at the beginning of the level. You start where you died or where you last checkpointed. So there'll be little markers, like in the original game, that when you run and touch them, they'll get a little marker. They'll change their what they look like, and you say, aha, if I die, I'm going to go back there. So it's a technique to keep your game from being too frustrating. If you've got complex levels and you don't want people to feel like, oh man, I got all the way through and I died, then I got to start over again.
So in this particular game, you're avoiding the spikes, collecting the coins, and then you said we're supposed to run to the monsters, not away from the monsters?
Yeah, you're supposed to go feed the monsters.
Yourself.
In the original game, you're not picking up coins, you're picking up like gems or something, and the monsters need gems.
And in the original game, you're climbing up to the.
In the third one, the animation is you go up and you climb up into the mouth of the monster.
Yeah.
But in the first one, people will recall in the first episode of this 3-part sequence so far, I said I'm actually using elements from all 3 games. The problem is you can't get the first 2 games anymore. You can only look at them on YouTube. They were smart in that way, in that they said, okay, we've gotten our money out of number 1 and number 2. It's time for number 3 to be released, so we're going to remove those from the market, and we're going to go on to 3.
Really? So would you release? Would you remove 1 and 2?
Yeah, well, I think it's because they said, okay, we've satisfied. We got everybody who's going to buy our game has bought our game, and instead of giving them a level 2 experience, which is kind of like we were good, but we weren't as good as we are now. We're going to give them everything that was in 2, but more and better. And we don't want them buying 2 and thinking, it's an okay game. We want them buying 3 and saying, this game is awesome.
See, that'd almost be like, in my mind, if I had season 1 and 2 and 3 of House of Cards on Netflix, and I've only watched season 3, right? Because all my friends are talking about season 3.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm going to go back and binge watch season 1 and 2.
Okay, but that's not exactly the same thing. I would argue that maybe they get better from season to season.
Yeah.
I think my argument still stands, though, is that They Must Be Fed 1 was a basic implementation of these features. Less artsy, a little bit less artsy, didn't have all the mechanics. Then They Must Be Fed 2 came along, and then they added a whole bunch more mechanics. The art got nicer and juicier. And then 3 was like the icing. And I think that what you would see is if you were able to side-by-side compare all of them, you'd go, wait. 3 and 2 are almost exactly the same.
So you wouldn't go back and play the old school pixelated
We would, because we're
Zelda.
game developers. We would as game developers, and game aficionados would, but average consumers would feel like, hey, why did I just pay another $2.99 or whatever the game costs when 3 is very much like 2. I mean, there's lots of differences, but maybe as an unsophisticated gameplay, they go like, hey, this doesn't feel like it's worth another $3.
Gotcha. So it's the HD version of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could get their input. I'm kind of putting words into their mouth, but I'm guessing. This is me guessing at their motivation for doing what they did.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking of the compounding effects of marketing, but okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
I see
the compounding effects are still there because people still talk about and have their games.
Right.
It's just you can't get them anymore. It's like, oh no, you can only get the best and the most recent one.
Right.
So go get it.
Interesting. Yeah, before they take it off the store.
Yeah. Prices, I think, were different.
Do the Flappy Bird thing and then threaten to take it off the store and then.
Yeah. Like I said, I would love to hear all of their motivation because I'm sure it's not quite that simple.
Right.
They probably really wrangled with the idea of whether to remove these things from the store or not.
Okay. Well, hey, I haven't had a chance to tell you about this yet, but Rob Allison is going to join us next week for he's going to talk a little bit about Laser Dot Games, what they're up to. They've got a new game called Hapiko that I don't know if you guys have seen this thing, but it's fantastic. Maybe we'll clone it. No.
Yeah, let's clone Hapiko. I'm sure that'll make them really happy.
That'll make them really happy. And they're also doing some great stuff with desktops, so we're going to talk to them about that as well. So,
that'll be a good fit then, because my topics won't take up. I can do this talk in half an hour. We can leave checkpoints for another day.
Okay, good. That'll work out. All right, well, you guys join us next Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific to talk about that, and also check the show notes for links to the code, and go watch those previous episodes as well where we talked about gravity, key inputs, air control, all that kind of stuff. So, all right, until then, have a great week and happy coding.
Woo!